the deployment starts off in Helmand, and that's actually where we had our first firefight, but then moves into what really a lot of the guys would call hell. We ended up starting to suffer casualties, and coming out of there, it was like, holy crap, guys, like, we're over a 50% casualty rate. That discipline that was instilled in there and instilled from higher command, that's really what got a lot of those guys through that, and what got them through some of the things we had to face out there. So just do the best job you can possibly do and hopefully save some lives in the process. That's what it all boiled down to. A lot of us self-isolate. You know, we just kind of back off. And I really feel that that's the wrong answer for a lot of them. And it just boils over to what's happening in society. Through video games and through our phones and everything else, we're isolating ourselves from other people.
I want to touch on what you mentioned there on the self-isolation, because we know a lot of veterans struggle with that. We're losing too many veterans to suicide. If any of you are listening to this and happen to be what Will described as a self-isolating veteran, please reach out to Will. Please reach out to me. Please reach out to someone that can help you, because we know veterans are mission driven.
Sharing these purposes, sharing these stories, and like creating this community with these other people and with these other veterans that have a shared experience, it's a powerful thing.
Welcome back to Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick. And if you're listening in today, I might sound a little nasally. I got a head cold going on that I'm fighting off and hoping the Sudafed kicks in here quickly. But this is your reminder to share. And hey, I got actually a little favor for you. If you would, on your favorite platform, whether that's Apple, YouTube, Spotify, or any of the other platforms we're on, would you leave a review and tell us what you're learning? I would love to know what the most high impact thing that you've learned in all the episodes that you've listened to. I would love to know that. I'd love to hear from you and see how we can continue to get better for you. That being said, Spartans, today is a great day to have a great day. Why, you might ask? Only you can answer that. And you begin by identifying your purpose for being. On the line all the way from Maryland, and I say all the way, you're on East Coast, we're on Central Time, not that far. U.S. Army combat veteran, marketing expert, author, and servant leader in the veteran community. Please join me in welcoming Will Yeske to the show. Good morning, brother. How are you?
Oh, man, that's a hell of an intro there. Jeez. I'm great. How about yourself?
Started off hot for you.
Other than right? Other than the cold, it's been good.
You know, kids, you can't get around colds when you have kids in school, as you know.
No, you sure can't.
So I try the cold showers, the cold plunges, the getting enough fresh air, vitamins, all the different. I did well, like I told you, all the way through the school year. This is my first one, so it is what it is.
Doing all right. Better than most, right?
Better than average, right? Well, first and foremost, thank you for your service to our country.
Oh, man.
I always want to state that, and our gratitude should be there with you guys. And thank you for being here today. I know you recently released your book, which is right next to him if you're watching on video. Congratulations on Damn the Valley. Knowing that everyone can go out and buy your book, let's give a brief synopsis. Actually, before we do that, where's the best place to buy it? Because I know sometimes we have preferences.
And that's not really like Amazon helps the rankings, where you can go in Barnes & Noble, you get it. Honestly, there's some people, these stories just need to be told. Go tell your library. But you can also get it at damnthevalleybook.com. You can get a author signed copy. And one of the things I've been doing there is with the author signed copies, with everything with this, it's all been about giving back. So for every 2 copies that I sell on an author copy, I can send one to the guys that were actually there that are featured in the stories. So we're getting there. We actually have a reunion event coming up in June. So what my goal is to have, 100 and some odd copies there waiting for those guys to hand them over and say, hey, this is really your story. Thank you. And thank you for being part of it.
Well, hopefully the Spartan audience can just take care of that number for you. That'd be awesome.
That'd be sweet. That's been the biggest thing.
Yeah, and it's almost like a Tom's model, like a Tom's shoes model. Give that back. I love it. So let's give a brief synopsis, then and then we'll get into some of the lessons and applications from it.
Yeah, so the book is about a deployment I was on with the 82nd Airborne back in 2009 to 2010. And that's conventional Army does your standard 12-month. Sometimes you'll get a 9-month, or a 15-month. But when you start looking at what was going on during it, 9 months in the Argandab to where you're living in an austere environment, there the deployment starts off in Helmand, and that's actually where we had our first firefight, but then moves into what really a lot of the guys would call hell. This particular valley is, where we ended up starting to suffer our casualties, and coming out of there, it was just crazy to start looking at these numbers. And then someone did the calculations. It was like, holy crap, guys, like we're over a 50% casualty rate, and
Wow.
you take a group of, a standard infantry company is around 150 plus men. And you look at the way we were operating as well. The area was so saturated. We never operated as a company like you would in a conventional. We were operating platoon dependent and then going out in patrols of, small kill teams. So around 12 to 14 guys, while having to, do base defense because you're not living on a big fob or anything like that. Like in Kandahar, you're living, you see some of the pictures and stuff. I have a crazy social media campaign that's been running for the last year out there, but you can see just on how close of proximity we were living on an Afghan police checkpoint that we kind of plussed up with some HESCO barriers. And then once we got security and everything, I mean, it was really 30 men, 30 US personnel, a few Afghans in the middle of nowhere.
Man, incredible. And what's 50%? How long did it take before the powers that be started making some strategic changes when you guys are suffering that many casualties?
So this all comes into like how you come into this valley. We expected heavy resistance right off the start. I mean, the guys that were there before us, the 117 strikers, when we got there to do the left seat, right seat, so like a side-by-side patrol where they kind of hand off the area of operations to your guys, they go through. So we show up and they're scared. One of the kids I was talking to, he was scared out of his wits. And I'm like, man, what's going on, dude? Like, how's it been out here? And he's like, dude, that you don't want to be here. We haven't even left the wire in a month because of just how bad it is. And I mean, they were double stacking tank mines, blowing strikers in half. Like between that, the anti-personnel mines, there's certain areas to where I know the guys across the river from us, Charlie Company, they actually just got a book deal through this as well, which is pretty cool. And, we'll talk about that later on in it, but, it was a rough area. And then to go down into there expecting heavy resistance and there's nothing, and we're like, okay, what's going on? And then it was like fighting ghosts. It is just landmine after landmine after landmine. And it turned out the epicenter of kind of where a lot of this was coming from was a little town called Detaching. So I want to say we were about a mile down the river from it, our main headquarters posting, which is what we kind of took and built up out of nothing. So you come into this valley, you understand we need to establish a presence down there to deny enemy movement. We come in hard to the point of like where we took this area to place our base, but there was no real plan in place, I guess. There was no real support behind it. So for about a month, there's like empty HESCO barriers around this thing. So there's no outer security really. I mean, anybody could just start firing right through that wall. Luckily, we didn't have that happen. And, eventually got earth movers out there and some local contractors and stuff to fill these things. But it kind of was just ramping up,
Yeah.
to where, again, fighting ghosts. But then we started to notice this pattern. This town down the river from here, this town of Detaching is just they're not friendly. Anytime we start going through there, we start hitting mines. We start hitting, there was one instance to where, someone chucked a grenade over a wall at us. You have another one to where there was the Ides of March, actually, is that portion of it, to where Sergeant Thomas actually was basically taken out of commission. He was one of the guys that got sent back, but he got a ball bearing from a suicide bomber went right through his body armor. Collapsed his lung, also hit one of the other guys behind him. That was one of the machine gunners at this T intersection by the name of Will Ross. It almost separated his shoulder from there, and
the
as
ball
I come
bearing that
up,
went through Thomas.
no, there
the
was
other one. There's
so if
other
you-
ball bearings.
yeah, other ball bearings. So if you watch the movie, you ever seen the movie Swordfish?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so where they have all those claymores, and that's essentially
Yep.
what those guys would do. But they would just take, car ball bearings, nails, anything you could find that would just cause like a spall,
Cause damage.
Oh my gosh, just crazy stuff that you would come across. And as I'm coming through, because I have the radio, so I'm the guy radioing up this medevac and stuff to come in. And I'm going back through after they bring security back up, and I'm checking guys over, asking how guys are doing. And I come up to Will and I'm talking with him for a minute. I didn't even realize he was hit at the time. He's like, yeah, I got, everything's good though. And I'm like, this guy's still pulling security. And just 3 months prior, our first KIA, he was in that explosion right off the bat. He was thrown over a wall with one of the other guys, Jason Johnson, who ended up, getting killed. This was December 26th. In that instance, and here he is out here still holding security, calm as calm can be, pointing down there, almost like just waiting, like, show me your face, so I can blow it away. And he's just a determined guy, overall, highly disciplined soldier. And then that was really, you have paratroopers are a mixed bag, but that discipline that was instilled in there and instilled from higher command, that's really what got a lot of those guys through that, and what got them through some of the things we had to face out there. Because you hit a point. I think everybody kind of hit a point and stuff. And we were one of the few companies to where, we had guys that they didn't want to go out, but nobody ever said, hey, I'm not going outside the wire. It was always, they always picked themselves up. And I know there was a chapter in there that talks about it, to where one of the squad leaders comes in because he's like, where's my guy? He's supposed to be down here. We're leaving for this patrol. And he goes in, and this kid is, crying on his bunk, and he's just like, he's ready to go, but he's just that gravity of the situation. He's like, I might not come back from this one, and he had to kind of get a little rough with him. It was like, look, man, freaking, you don't think that everybody out here is thinking the same damn thing?
Yeah.
We're all, but we're in it together, and we're just, we're there for each other no matter what. I myself had to face that thought, leaving the wire one day. All right. I found myself thinking, who's next? Who's the next one that's going to hit one? And I said, whoa, buddy, like, stop thinking like that, because if you start thinking like that, it's going to be you. You're out here to do a job, do the best job you possibly can. You're the one on the radio. It's up to you to inform the commander of the situation or get these medevacs out here, and you're good at it. So just do the best job you can possibly do and hopefully save some lives in the process. And that's what it all boiled down to.
Yeah, I'm glad you went there, because I was just going to ask you and maybe give some more clarity on this, because the vast majority of us, including myself, have not served, did not choose to serve our country, that are American citizens. There's a brave few that do, including yourself. When you're out there in such a hellhole, and you got people, friends, and whatnot, just getting killed around you or injured around you, how do you keep your mind clear? How do you keep your mind going forward? Because the vast majority of us are never going to face a situation like you have faced. But it's a good lesson to learn how your mindset is, because that doesn't mean they're not going to face hard things in life.
Yeah.
But they're not going to face that drastic of a thing. So where's the mind going? How can you help maybe parlay some tricks or tips to them?
Well, on that note right there, even is like that even just sounds, not to marginalize anybody or whatnot, but like it's not everybody, the worst day of your life is the worst day of your life. It doesn't matter whether it's, in a minefield in Afghanistan or, I don't know, let's say, something happened with your kid at school, your kid got beat up at school or is, I don't know, anything. Give me an instance, but like they're going through that same
cancer diagnosis, suicide, anything. I mean, there's tons of stuff.
They're going through that same type of thing. That is the worst day of their life, So, I mean, really it's one step at a time. It's taking that tactical pause, taking a breath and going, hey, like, all right, what am I supposed to be learning right now? What's this next step? Where is the next step? Is there someone in my life that I can, anchor to or reach out to and say, hey man, like I'm going through this thing. Can you either just hear me out so I can discuss it? Or, do you have a mentor? Do you have somebody you can reach out to? Do you have a friend that can listen? But it's about taking that next step and also just being aware of the stuff around you of like, what am I learning right now? What am I supposed to be seeing? You're in crisis mode. You're not seeing that. So it's take that pause, take that breath, figure out what that next step is. And, one of the things when we would get out of, when we dismount from a Humvee to 5s and 25s. So what that stands for, and more recently 0s, 5s and 25s is when you open that door, your first step out. All right. And then you're looking 5 meters out and then you're looking 25 meters out. So, I mean, that mentality of, getting the momentum going, take that first step into it and then keep going, see your way from there. Sometimes it's not about having that all out plan. Sometimes it's just on the fly.
I love that. And actually, I don't know if you've read Jocko's books, but he talks about detaching, right? So you're detaching and then observing. Right. So anytime, and I've talked about this actually with my Bible study, we talk about it all the time. And when our emotions run hot with our spouse or our children or anything of that nature is like detach yourself from the situation emotionally and be able to observe and then get a better course of action with that next step.
Yeah. We make terrible decisions under emotion. And I know it's not, it's not possible to completely, but to detach yourself from that. We're human beings, that is part of what makes us is those emotions and part of what makes that passion and that drive. But at the same time, what you're saying there is to recognize that and detach from that.
Yep. Yeah. And it's a learned skill. It's a learned skill. So it's not something you're born with or not born with. Everyone has the power to do it. You just got to practice it over and over and over again until it becomes something that's part of your repertoire. And so
that's everything.
Yes, very
everything.
much so.
I mean, like the what we're doing right now, a podcast. This is the same deal. I think now I've got 30 some odd under my belt, and it's, I still suck, but it's those small improvements over time. It's, what do I have going on, here? Or am I using a virtual background or like, do I have an actual studio space in place? What can I bring in? What's one small improvement I can make for the next podcast, or look at someone else's, look at the people who are performers out there. What are they doing that's different? What am I not doing that they're doing? And I'm not saying to like, copy their methodology or anything like that, but figure out your own way forward with that, and that's
right.
Same thing with the book, and following that path and finding that path on the way through. And you'll know it when you find that, because there's just been things with this book that have just been unexplainable, absolutely incredible. The fact that we're on right now and we were talking before about MFCEO project and Arete and stuff on how, during my undergrad studies, that was one of the biggest things behind it. And I started listening to MFCEO because him, Rogan, a few others and stuff, just because of the guests they would have on. And that type of mentality resonated with me, that intensity that Andy had out there. It reminded me a lot of the special operations commanders and stuff and the people that were over there, just on that very blunt, this is what you have to do.
Direct style of communication.
But I get that, and that's something that resonated with me. And if you find that, and then you put it across the board with a bunch of your subject matter experts, it's a great, it's cool. It's a great thing.
It's a great tool, and we wanted to give that a shout out because Andy Frisella has changed his podcast to the Real AF, and you get Q&AF, and you get some political stuff in there, and you get their opinions with him and DJ. The original podcast he ran was with Vaughn, who's a pastor and now business owner, was his co-host, and Andy was just spitting business game. And it's still there. So if you go to Andy's podcast and scroll down through all the Real AF, you'll see all the MFCEO episodes. And they are chock filled with entrepreneurial gold.
There is so much gold in there. Like just the things I extrapolated and then, would bring into the classroom even. I called out my marketing professors like once or twice, and they were just like, because it was right, it was right information. And they were just like, man, like, where did you get this from?
Podcasters, dude.
Podcast.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So in total, you spent 11 years in the Army, and now you sit before us with what I can only imagine to be a powerful outlook on life and business, just because of the stuff that we already talked about and much more, because you went to school again thereafter. And I touched on in your introduction, you and I both have a passion for staying near and dear to your why, your true north in life, your overall purpose for being. So why are you passionate about defining and aligning with your purpose?
Ooh, man. I mean, without purpose, you don't have anything. You're just, I think I say it it's in there, but I think it's in the author's note in the very beginning. If you don't have a purpose, you're literally a floater. And to explain to people what a floater is you are, you're a piece of you are literally just somebody existing in everyone else's life. Floating
I want
along
them to get the literal image. It's it's the one that didn't flush.
In the toilet.
It's just marinating in the toilet.
And that is like my biggest fear. That's something I never wanted to be. And I understand that like there's points in life to where you're like, all right, I'm searching for that next step or that direction or maybe that purpose even. And it's there. A lot of times it's something that we shirk away from. This book in particular, it was kind of a joke that was said at one of the compounds as we were leaving for a patrol. Sergeant Robert Muscle actually kind of was joking around. And he's like, 10 years from now, we're going to see a book with Yeske's name on it about all this. And I'm like, no way. And about 5 years after, I started getting that voice in the back of my head. Hey, man, you should write this stuff down. Hey, like you should do something with this. Like, it's, I just kept marginalizing, I'm like, hey, no one's going to want to hear about this. It's not going to do any good for anybody. And I kept doubting myself on it. And it really took someone else coming out with a book about that. There was a Wall Street Journal reporter, and shame on me for the first thing that I thought when I heard about that, because I immediately was like, oh, cool. I shirked that responsibility that was in the back of my head. And I said, excellent. Someone else is going to do it. And somebody quality, it's somebody from the Journal. This is going to be great. I don't have to do this. I'll do an interview with them. I'll put my story out there. And wrong answer, because fast forward a year when his book, it was a little bit more than a year when his book came out. But you go to when Bravo Company by Ben Kessling came out, I thought it was a good book, but there was a lot of the guys that were there that were just like, hey, it's not enough. It doesn't show the whole picture. It needs to be from someone that was there, and in hearing everything in the background and realizing that I screwed up, and that was built into the book too. I mean, just with that, having that humility of, if I can't put that lens out there, if I'm bringing other people into this and I'm talking about other people, I have to be able to turn that lens on myself too and put all of it out there, the good, the bad. There's a chapter in there called The Mexican Standoff, to where I almost created an international incident. I mean, to where There was literally a group of Afghans lining up, pointing weapons at us, as we're in this Humvee. We went into a literal Mexican standoff that I had caused. People are like, whoa, what? Even the guys were like, why would you put that in there? And I'm like, because it's going to come out eventually. Someone's going to talk about it. So if I can't put that lens on myself and say, hey, these are things that happened out there, then what good am I? What good is this story? It's not, so you have everything that happened out there, very, very raw. I think Petraeus had said it, and there with it, gritty. That's what it was. The word gritty. He was like, yeah, that needs to be in there because that's what this is. This is a no view of the battlefield, and some of it is hard to read. Some of these guys had to put it down. Some of the families of the guys that were there had to put it down during some points and go, man, and take a breath and go, I can't believe that these guys went through this and stuff. And it gave a different type of understanding, I guess, as to some of the challenges that are faced on the battlefield, some of the good times, some of the bad times, and really life at either end of the spectrum at its full extreme.
Well, I love when anyone can take ownership and be humble and say, hey, I caused this, or this was my fault, and this is what I learned from it.
Because you're not the same person later on, especially if you can do that. In the military, everything we do, and I'm sure you do it too in business, we AAR everything, which is after action review. We go over this stuff and say, hey, this is what happened. These are the facts. What can we do about it? What have we learned from this?
Yeah, I think the most common probably analogy in business is a SWOT analysis, right? So to an AAR, but you guys, what's cool about that is you guys do an AAR after every point of contact, which probably was daily, correct?
Damn sure. I mean, regardless if we got into contact or not, it was, again, you have a patrol of 12 to 14 guys. Everybody has a different view and a different perspective out there. So after every single patrol, we would come into the entry control point, the ECP of where our little base was, our fire base. And, we would go over it, from everybody had a voice at the table. Squad leader would go through, hey, this is what we did. This is what we saw. This is what my takeaway is from it. Or he would call out certain people. Hey, what did you see here? What did you, and then open the floor. All right. Anybody else got anything? What'd you see? What could we do better? And there was, everything as far as noise discipline. What could you do about, hey, this guy was missing, this strap was flapping out there, and people don't realize that even those small details, the details matter. And those small details add up, and that was one of the biggest things that we saw when we were going to leave. The replacements for us, we tried to hook them up much better than, we were kind of given in coming into there. And hey, this is the situation. We're going out on these patrols. This is what you need to be doing. And the one that stuck out in my head and in my mind was we came back from this patrol, and there's a just clear difference between the guys. Our guys immediately went into what we did every time. We, stripped down the weapons, got into something comfortable, stripped down the weapons, started cleaning everything up and relubing it, started pulling every single round out of the magazine. You dust off every single round. You pull your springs, you reset everything, you reset your gear to be ready on a moment's notice. All the other guys were like, wow, that was exhausting. I'm going to catch some rack time and go to sleep, and I'll take care of it when I get up. Wrong answer, especially out in an area like that. Yeah. And it's just that, right off the bat, seeing that and being like, man, I really hope this mentality doesn't continue with these guys, because if it does, they're in for a rude awakening.
Yeah. So I that AAR/SWOT, I think, for most businesses, and I'm guilty of this as well, only do a SWOT on an annual basis. And maybe you don't have to do a full-blown SWOT daily. That might be overkill, but perhaps quarterly is a better review point. But I'm just thinking about actually one of my best financial advisors, one of my most talented guys, one of the things he taught me was he would chalk things up to losses, almost like an AAR. So if he didn't close someone that he knew needed to take action on the first time, he would chalk it up in his head as loss. Okay. And not loss in a bad way where it demeaned him or that he was beating himself up, but loss in a way, how do I, when I'm in this position in the next time or next person that has a similar scenario, how do I get them to take action sooner or on this close versus having to take 2 closes, right? So it was actually kind of similar to what you're saying there, is a way for him to think through, I have to be better to make sure that they take action in this on the first time I ask them to versus the second or third time. So it's just having those little checkpoints, like you mentioned, that I think could be really, really helpful.
I mean, that's even with the campaign and getting this thing out there. You know, it's to go from, well, number one, to get people to read these days is a feat in itself.
That's so foreign to me because I'm reading every single day and have been and now keep in mind, I'm a college dropout and I hate, because I'm ADD, I hated reading. I hated being told what to read. When I'm choosing what to read, when I'm growing and I'm choosing to, whether it's self-development, whether it's leadership, whether it's a war story, I can choose to read those. I'm reading on a daily basis and have been for 20 years now.
Nice. Yeah. And
that's foreign. I know most people don't though.
Right. And there is so much to be gleaned. Look at successful people out there, quite honestly, and ask every single one of them, like, how do you take in information? And guaranteed every single one of them reads in one way or another, you know, whether it's whatever format it is, but they glean from the other people around them. I mean, some of the most successful people out there, that is what they do. They surround themselves with these subject matter experts. You don't have to be the smartest at that, but if you have somebody you can reach out to that is, you know, pack your wheelhouse, man.
Yeah. Hey, going back to your purpose real quick before we move on, has it transformed, or has your why transformed from active duty to now civilian life?
You know, I guess in a way it has. It's just been refocused. You know, I'm doing the same thing I wanted to do, but it's been refocused towards giving back into the veteran community, giving back into the community around me, and like being involved in it, because so many people just sit back, either not my problem or, you know, they don't want to put in the work because it's tough. Yeah. It's a pain in the butt to get anybody to do anything these days. But, you know, through this, and seeing how some of these other guys have lit up about it, and hearing, you know, guys face their traumatic or their traumas that they faced. And it's not just the guys that were there during this, the guys that were across the river from Charlie Company, you know, they're all starting to talk now. And with that peer-to-peer thing, with them talking with one another and stopping a lot of us self-isolate. You know, we just kind of back off. Hey, you know, I don't really fit in here. I'm just a lot of it just disappear from society completely. You know, and I really feel that that's the wrong answer for a lot of them. You know, I mean, I know that there's a time to where you do kind of need to have some space and evaluate and everything, but don't lose that purpose. Every single one that's been in the service sort of has this built-in purpose to give back, to help out. You know, not everybody is, you know, some of them are there for college and stuff, but you kind of catch that along the way. Especially in a time of war, you raise your hand to go out there and fight for one reason or another. Mm-hmm. Mine was just the fact of, again, I wasn't doing anything in my life at the time. Everything was focused on me. You know, I was getting involved heavily in the rally scene as far as racing and stuff. And I was doing all right. I was making some serious progress, more than most would ever thought. But I let things get to me, and I started becoming what I was talking about before, a floater. You know, I didn't have a purpose. And I kind of evaluated, and it was like, everything up until now, for the most part, has been about me. What if I flip this? What if I turn this to be around about other people? And the same thing with the book. With this, it was originally, the first draft was my perspective, but then starting to realize that all of this was a lot bigger than me, and bringing other guys in. And that's how we have the whole, you could see it right here if you're on video, the cover photo there with the guys pulling the flag out of the rubble. That picture, that's not my picture. That was given out to me by someone that was there, that still had this on a hard drive. And it wasn't even the original taker of the picture. It was somebody that had been sent it and still had the large format, the high resolution image and stuff that sent it over. So, I mean, there's like this network of guys out there. And as this thing goes along and as it's being seen more and stuff out there, they're interacting more within each other. But when I get stuff back from these guys, or, hey, I just read this story and like this part really hit me, or, some of the people that are no longer with us, like Sergeant Spotted Horse, he passed away a few years ago from ALS. So Lou Gehrig's, from exposure to some of the stuff that we were exposed to out there. And really it's through these stories and through these guys sharing this stuff that he's the memory of him is kept alive. Sharing these purposes, sharing these stories, and like creating this community with these other people and with these other veterans that have a shared experience. It's a powerful thing.
Yeah, no, it for sure is. And I want to touch on what you mentioned there on the self-isolation, because we know a lot of veterans struggle with that and then we're losing too many veterans to suicide. If any of you are listening to this and happen to be what Will described as a self-isolating veteran, please reach out to Will. Please reach out to me. Please reach out to someone that can help you, because we know veterans are mission driven. We know that. We know that's why you went to serve as well. You're mission driven. And then you're given a mission, and then that mission's taken away from you, or you choose to, retire, whatever it may be, and that mission's gone. We got to find you a new mission. And so please reach out. Please don't self-isolate, because we know that leads to, basically to suicide.
Yeah. And it is. People, they're numbing themselves. I noticed that, one of the biggest issues, quite honestly, is drinking. Alcohol is a massive, massive purveyor. Like I don't know what it is about that. Actually, that's something where I need to
numbing.
Go more in depth on it. Yeah.
It numbs the pain. And I've done a lot of work with veterans and communities, and even people that aren't veterans but struggle with PTSD. They look for ways to numb the pain and numb what they're going through, instead of actually fully process and get the help they need. So I don't blame them, but it's just a mask. It's not going to help long term. So you transition.
The problem is still there. Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry about that. No, I want to try, because we're having good conversation. You transitioned well from, or at least seemingly well, outside looking in, from service to entrepreneurship. Could you tell us a little bit about that journey, and potentially like why that was meaningful for you to put you on a new mission where some of these veterans may have not found their mission yet?
Well, and some of that also, it blurs together, because really when you start pulling it all apart and start looking at, the workload that I was doing, 18 credits a semester, business school in 2.5 years, which really would have been 2. There was a throwaway semester in there. Onto the Ivy League stuff afterwards, but I was running from facing this, quite honestly. I've talked to psychologists and stuff about this, and I made it to where my workload was so much I didn't really have to think about that other end of things, because there's certain chapters within writing this, reading something like this, and then also writing your own thoughts down. It allows you to process. So up until I wrote this, I had been able to talk about most any of these stories without any issue, with people, because I hadn't gone back and really pulled it apart. There was a few of them that I couldn't really talk about, or I wouldn't really talk about. But in pulling this thing apart, there was chapters to where tears were just streaming down my face. But then you go back, and some guys have mentioned some of the stories in this book, and I'm like, man, I put that in there? Like, I've completely forgotten about that afterwards, because my mind literally, I went through and I processed it and I said, okay, we're good with this now. Like, you've gone through this, you've kind of extrapolated what really happened here. You've seen how it's affected your life or how it's affected the lives of others, and you're at peace with this now. So, part of that process is just, it's all been part of it. But taking that drive, what you were saying before, burning through, having that successful transition out there, that's really eye of the beholder. I mean, I still don't see it as a successful transition because my mission is still to drag other people across that line. My ultimate goal is to get into tackling the transition assistance program itself, just because I saw a lot of the pitfalls in it and that it really didn't prepare me for what I had come up afterwards within school, within family, within finances and stuff afterwards. That's still things that I know that they can do a heck of a lot better job on, and really what my main goal is.
That's all. Yeah. So speaking of that, let's dig in a little bit more, because I dubbed you the servant leader in the veteran community in the intro, and I greatly applaud you for all the work that you're doing. And I know that you see it as a big mission forward. There's a lot more work to do, but let's speak a little bit more to that and what some of the work you're doing. By the way, before you get into that, I can help on the finance side. I spent 17 years in the finance. So if you get into that and need some help with helping these veterans transition,
awesome.
Please let me know. I'd love to help with just education or whatever. I'm actually going into my kids' school for the middle school and teaching some basics of finance, because the vast majority of our country is not even taught the basics. And then they get, pitched a credit card as they're a freshman outside their door, outside their dorm room. I got a credit card and I got a free t-shirt for signing up. And then all of a sudden you fill $500 worth of credit card up with beer. And then you learn the late charges and how it damages your credit and all the different stuff. So, man. So anyhow,
I mean, something just as simple as assets and liabilities, man. Oh my God. Most people just are, I have, and when they start listing their assets and then you truly bring them through it and they're like, oh, and they just realize that, it's like, no, none of this is giving back anything to you. You're just sitting on a pile,
That's right. So tell us a little bit more about the work that you're doing with veterans now.
Yeah. So some of the stuff was, it's being available. It's being available for these other guys. One of the things that I've done is, I've been speaking more recently with some of the VA, like Maryland VA people. There's the county that I'm in, strangely enough, which again, it's not strange at all once you start looking at what's going on here. And there's really no coincidence with this, but I am now in one of the highest, the county that I'm in has the highest veteran suicide rate out of Maryland.
Oh man.
Which exactly, like that was my first thing. But then I was like, you know what? That's why you're here, dude. That is why, you might look at it as like this, holy crap and everything, but how much more of an impact, and what am I more exposed to out here? This is actually a blessing. To be out here. One of the things that we did, it's really about getting people to talk. That's one of the biggest things and that we've seen is reach out to your old friends, through writing this book and reconnecting. I sort of saw a lot of the value in it. So that's sort of been what we've been doing within the veteran community. The guys down here, I've been visiting the universities and popping into the veteran centers and stuff out there, because I know that when I was in school, we would sort of just use it as a hideaway from the rest of the university. And by the end there, I started pushing the guys there, started showing up. Hey, let's go out. Let's go do a gym workout together. Let's, anything to get that peer-to-peer, but outside of the isolated whole. A lot of the guys that were in the stories from these books, the same thing. They're talking amongst each other. Now there's actual Zoom groups. Like when COVID hit, we saw a huge spike in suicides and stuff out there. And one of the other guys, I mentioned it at the end of the book, David Huff, me and him, like he originally put it together, and then I kind of saw the framework and was like, hey man, like whoa, here we go. And we started veterans peer groups, which was really essentially a mastermind, format for other guys. And we would go around and have discussions. Hey, what's going on in everyone's life and everything else? Hey, who's experiencing an issue? Because a lot of these guys, those barriers to speak up about their problems and their issues, they're gone because of what we've experienced together already. So a lot of them would, hey, I'm having problems with my wife, or, I'm divorced and I'm having issues with stuff with the kids and this situation. More times, actually every single time, I shouldn't even say more times than not, it was every single time. Someone else within the group would have been like, I've experienced that before, or I'm going through that myself right now, and this is what's worked for me. The information is out there, and we're stronger as a group. It's stronger together. And it's these guys that a lot of them have this whole thing of the military kind of teaches you to shove it down in the bottom of the duffel bag, hey, stow it away and we'll come back to it later. And then they just never do. It sits there and festers. And it's, that isolating ourselves and stuff it's the biggest part of that. And we start unpacking, once you start talking amongst each other. And that's one of the biggest things too, is once you know your guys. And when I left the military, there was a lot of change that was happening within the military too. And it just boils over to what's happening in society. Society is also doing a lot of the same thing. We're through video games and through our phones and everything else, we're isolating ourselves from other people. When's the last time you just talked with somebody on the street? A lot of times we shy away from that. Why don't we talk to people anymore? They've made it convenient to stay in your own little bubble, but know the people around you. When I left the military, one of my biggest things, I went back to conventional army for the last 8 months of my career. And when I showed back up, they made me a platoon sergeant, like right off the bat. And I kind of went around, and my first thing was, hey, what do you guys know about each other? Like, tell me, went to one of the teams, hey, tell me about this other guy on your team. Oh, I don't really know him. And the more I went around, I just found out like they just went back to their barracks rooms at night and would play video games and stuff. They never, and I was like, man, why? The teaching that I had was always, you go out as a squad, you go out as a fire team. You're always together. You anticipate each other's movements, to where like these combat patrols and stuff we were in, you could recognize in pitch darkness, just with the way that somebody was walking, who was who. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing I did when I got over to there as that platoon sergeant, is I talked to the other one and I was like, hey man, like these guys just don't, like, do you think that this is right? Like these guys don't even know each other. Is that how this is across the battalion? Yeah, but it just is what it is. I'm like, no, it's not just is what it is. Like, what can we do about it? And we took the guys out to the field for 2 weeks. I mean, they hated us for it at first, but then they didn't realize, what was going on. But staying in a patrol base for a week, and they were like, man, what are we doing out here? And I was like, you're getting to know each other. After about a week, it wasn't, I kind of let the cat out of the bag. It's like, no, we're just camping, man. Like, I know you guys think this is stupid and we're doing this and that, but now answer these questions. What can you tell? Where's he from? And the stark difference in everything that they could rattle off about each other, total different. And started to what my old leadership taught us. If he goes out on the weekend, you guys all go out on the weekend. You're all going out together. If he comes back with a black eye,
do life together.
You guys better all be beat up too and scuffed up too. Because if you're not, like, who had his back?
We talked about a couple different important things there, and it reminded me of Remember the Titans, when Coach Boone made them, the black players and the white players, get to know each other on the team, to form that camaraderie, to build the teamness of what he needed to go into that season, and make sure that they weren't fighting with each other, that they were going to fight the team that was lining up across from them. But you said something really crucial in there, and I'm not even sure you recognize the power in it. That comment or phrase that and I've been guilty of using it myself, it is what it is. But you said something very powerful. Well, no, it's not just how can we help? What can we do to make this different? Saying sometimes it is what it is and there can't be any change. Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
But oftentimes we say that as like a platitude and don't actually ask the next question, which you did, which is super powerful, is no, what actually could we do to make a difference here? And so if you ever hear that phrase out there, if you happen to say that phrase, make sure it actually is what it is. Like, make sure, like, because what you're doing there is actually giving away all your providence. It's giving away all your control when you say it just is what it is and not actually taking responsibility or asking the question, what can we change here? If there truly is nothing, which is probably rare, but there may be some circumstances like that. That being said, if there is something you can change, you should ask the question.
Absolutely.
So I just want to point that out. It was really good of you, and I'm not sure you recognize how powerful that is for everyone around us. So we're coming up. I got a couple more questions for you. You started this Warrior WOD recently, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So let's open that door. What's the mission?
So, I mean, that is really, it's just the foundation of, that their main purpose is kind of creating a mental health, their positive mental health outlook and stuff, but it's through physical. That is the foundation, these discipline, the habits to get up, to do these workouts, to create a group of people that are out there that are like-minded. And again, you and I both know, because I know because of where you're at and stuff, that you understand and you recognize that it is really the foundation of your mental health. Do hard things as a group. And, there's just so much value to that. If you're not physically fit, you're not operating at the potential you can. If you look around you, I've had my own journey in there. There was a portion to where I lost 70 pounds. Once I got out of the service, I blew up at one point, just because I wasn't following that same discipline. I kind of backed off. Hey, I can slack off a little bit. Hey, I have this little injury. Hey, and I didn't realize how much it was affecting mental health wise, how much it was affecting my family wise, how much it was affecting my interactions with other people, or that clarity. And that's really what Warrior WOD is doing, is it's getting people back out there, for that foundational purpose of building your body up. And in fact, in doing so, you're building a community, you're building up your mind, and you're becoming purpose-driven, and it is just it's at the core. It's at the core of it's the foundation for everything. It's like a pyramid. Yeah.
No, I 100% agree with you there. And I think I told you 75 Hard right now. What a lot of people don't realize about 75 Hard is it's actually just one part of the Live Hard program. And going back to what you said earlier about it, we just don't talk to each other in public anymore. The third phase of the Live Hard program, you have to do all the 75 hard tasks, and there's a couple more that you add to it. And Andy was very purposeful in this. One of those tasks that is added to it is to talk to 2 strangers per day.
Oh, no way. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So
all right.
if you
I need to go back and I need to actually, I know he started the 75 Hard thing. I just need to jump into
We started Live Hard, and 75 Hard it's got billions of hashtags now. It's the most popular mental toughness program ever created. But he created Live Hard. It's a year-long program. So you do 75 days, and you can do it at any time of the year. It's just a 365-day program. It doesn't have to be Jan 1 to December 31st. But then there's phase 1, which is a 30-day program. You could start that right at the end of your 75 days. Between phase 1 and phase 2, you have to take 30 days off. And the reason being is that it's like, what habits did you build? Do you go fall back into your complacent life? Do you fall off the program completely? So then when you kick in back into phase 2, for those that don't, is like, oh, am I shocking the system again? Or did I kind of keep a lot of those things going forward? So in phase 1, it institutes cold shower and 10-minute visualization, stuff like that. Phase 2 is just the 75 hard task, just to see if you can come back to it. Phase 3, we add the talking to 2 strangers, an act of kindness And there's something else I think that's added. But those talking to two strangers a day really puts you outside your comfort zone, especially if you're the one used to playing video games, the one that's used to isolating, stuff of that nature. Now, if you're in the checkout line at the grocery store and you don't got your 2 done that day, you may have to turn around and talk to someone behind you. Say, hey, how was your day? And that might be awkward at first. You go 30 days in a row talking to 2 different people, whether it's at the gas station, the grocery store, at a networking function, whatever it might be, you start to build that muscle. It's less awkward.
Yeah, it is. You will get, I know what you mean. Like, cause you do get that like from people that are like, hey, why is this guy talking to me, man? Like, cause I'm very much that way. I like going out and talking to the guy on the street, that's,
especially on the East Coast. The East Coast, right? Like, you look or say, what's up? Let's see in the Midwest, like when we pass each other on the street, we'll at least give a head nod. We'll at least give the head nod, right? It's like, what's up? Or we'll say, hey, or we'll hold the door. Yeah. Actually, the Midwest, the driving thing is, you got your hand on the steering wheel. You may get a wave. One finger could be 2 fingers, wave from the steering wheel. And the East Coast is a little bit different. It's a little more direct, and you don't look at each other. You don't say hi as much. You don't hold the doors open as much, which just different sects of our society. But that putting yourself outside your comfort zone and talking to 2 strangers a day and communication has become more and more of a lost art. And I'm trying to teach my kids that communication is going to be a superpower for them, because so many are just got their faces buried in the phones, in the video games, and not able to talk. And if you want to make yourself indispensable as an employee or entrepreneur, sales and communication is the thing that every business needs. Every business needs business development, which is sales and marketing. And so that's one of the core functions of business. So you want to make yourself indispensable, be great at communication, be great at sales, and you will be indispensable no matter what.
Yep. Yeah. Sales is, it's in everything. You have to think about it. You're selling yourself. Any conversation you open to, in one way or another, you're selling yourself. You're selling a product, yourself, a service, something of that nature, everything. I've actually challenged a couple times when I've spoken to university classes, business school, to say, hey, come up with one thing for me, just one, that at some point in the chain has not been sold. And a couple might have even said, I think one time someone said religion. I go, you sure about that? Ooh.
So,
toughest.
There's a lot of options that could potentially go up, but then when you peel the onion back, you're like, oh no, it was sold at that point in the chain, or no, it's actually still sold today. So I got one final question for you, Will. I ask it to everyone. Don't prepare you for it, and you may have a lot of opinions on this, so go with your gut. What is an unpopular belief that you hold to be true that most others would disagree with?
The Genghis Khan, whether it's a ruthless killer. No, I'm just kidding.
That's actually, you sure most would disagree with that?
No, that he wasn't I actually, like, because a lot of people, I go back and they say something about what's a historical figure you'd want to sit down with, and I say Genghis Khan, not that he wasn't a ruthless. I mean, you have to look at his situation, but really when you look down on how he ran the kingdom, you've probably delved into this, and if you haven't, pick it up. Genghis Khan and the History of the Modern World.
I haven't read that.
Oh, that is a fantastic book. And it talks about, number one, a lot of the memories on how people remember the Khan, being somebody who really literally changed the carbon footprint of the planet, where they're like, man, the guy was stacking skulls outside of, he was just ruthless. He took over a good portion of the planet. But when you start looking at how that was done, how all that came to be, is that those memories of everything, the brutalities and stuff, that a lot of that wasn't him. A lot of that was actually an ancestor of him that did it in his name. He's like, I'm a descendant of the great Khan, and I'm doing this, and genocide, atrocities, and everything else. He ran things really different. A lot of times he would come in and they would send emissaries first, like a psyops. Everyone's gonna die. And most times, more than not, the armies would just defect. They would show up, and the opposing army would just be like, "City's yours." Where do you want us?
We don't want to fight.
Yeah, well, because he would come in, and he tried this at first, is he would use the leadership that was in place, and he would just transfer over, like, hey, what can I learn from this particular culture? What can I glean from what they're doing, where they're successful and stuff? Obviously, he's choosing these tactical advantages or these tactical movements. Hey, I want this for my kingdom to further my kingdom. That's why he was pushing out, his area of reign. But a lot of it was collaboration. He found that the people that were in charge before, though, would more times than not end up double crossing him. So he would take a lot of them out of power and place the people at the bottom rungs up in those positions, because they sort of saw these pitfalls. They would do these, they saw the end that the others didn't, that the CEO and stuff did not. And more times than not, they would be outstanding rulers, because he would pair them with somebody in his kingdom that would enable them and stuff along the way. So, I mean, it was more about a collaboration than anything else, collaboration and communication across the board. There's one instance that you would like, actually, in particular, is that the Catholic Church actually sent out emissaries because they were getting worried. He's moving more and more west. Mm-hmm. And they sent out emissaries like, stop in the name of God, and he kind of laughed at him. And he's like, do you realize that the majority of my kingdom is actually of the Christian faith? And they had no idea. And here they are. This is during the time of the Spanish Inquisition. And he leads them into a round table that he has, to where, as the Catholic Church is persecuting, and going through some of the atrocities that happened there, he had a table with all religions, not in conflict or anything, but talking about the different aspects of the religion and where it all fell in, and through discourse and stuff of where everything was. And it's just unbelievable to look at that and say, man, like, and look at what he accomplished during his lifetime.
Yeah.
And I know it's a little bit of a different viewpoint, but you also have to think the world was a little bit of a different,
it was a different place at that time.
Yes.
Well, very similar. Like, so that's really good, because one of the things that a pastor that I look up to greatly has always taught us in the church was that the Bible wasn't written to us. It was written for us, because it was written at such a different time. It was written to a different people. So it was written for us nowadays, and then project that into the future, but it wasn't written to us. So that's very similar, as it's hard to put ourselves in a position to realize what was going on at that time, because we can look back in full judgment, right, of the very brief little things that we were taught about Genghis Khan in history class, versus doing a deep dive into what was going on, what was the landscape, how was he leading? What came to mind immediately for me when you were talking about those mergers and acquisitions in business, the vast majority of the time, you do not retain the leadership team, because it's a totally different core value structure, culture, and vision. And because you're acquiring that company, it's you want to install your culture, your vision, your core values. And so you want to promote from your culture, not have that culture or potentially bad culture breed into your good culture. So that was the first thing that came to mind as you were describing that. I'm gonna have to dig into that. That seems very interesting.
It's phenomenal. I mean, that book and what you're talking about with, just different times and stuff, you have to look at it explains it in the very beginning. So you'll kind of get it, but it was just the society and where he lived in the Mongol society and everything. He was forced to kill one of his brothers, when he was a kid, because they were coming after him to take him down. Like, it was just a complete different hierarchy and stuff back then on how everything was run. There's so much in that book to glean from. It's, and again, like we were talking about before, once your eyes have been open to certain things, you look at things differently, and you're like, oh man, all right, that's what I can pull from here, and then go back again and maybe in 5 years' time, because you're a different person at that point.
Yep.
Right? What can I glean again from here? What other lessons are vested within? Because there's lessons around us all the time.
Just like I never step in the same river twice, because the river's not the same and I'm not the same person. As the way it should be anyhow, if you're continuing to grow. I say often, because it was a nursery rhyme to me by my father, but you're either green or growing or ripe and rotting. There is no staying the same.
Yeah.
So, Will, thank you so much for being on here today and pouring your wisdom into our audience. Where can they follow you, find you? What's the best spots?
So I mean, across the board on social, you have at Damn the Valley Book. You also have at William Yeske. I mean, WilliamYeske.com. I'll just shoot you over to my LinkedIn. But I mean, it's all there. You know, I mean, that's
good.
It's easy enough to find me. You can Google me at this point. You know, just look up William Yeske and the page will show.
There it is. SEO is strong with William Yeske. All right. So everyone, go check out Damn the Valley. Get it on Amazon. Go to damnthevalley.com. Follow the book. Let's honor these soldiers' stories. Let's honor getting these books into their hands. For Will here, he's poured a lot into us. This book, I can't wait. And the cover's awesome. I love that picture. I'm glad you told the story about the picture, because it is freaking cool.
The picture on the front cover here, once the word started to really get out, I got a call from one of the guys that was there, Brian Erickson. And he goes to me, he's, you know, I've been watching everything that you've been doing with this book, and I love this and everything else. But, you know, I got to let you know, I recovered that flag from Afghanistan. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you have the flag from the cover of the book? And he's like, yeah, when we left. So what happened in this particular thing was the enemy set off a 1,000-pound bomb trying to completely flatten the compound the guys from 2nd Platoon were staying in, you know, in an attempt to kill everybody. None of our guys ended up dying during that. But I mean, we're talking guys buried alive. Over 50% of them that were at that particular compound were medevaced. You know, it was bad.
1,000 pounds. That's just, wow.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, well, and hearing guys screaming from under the earth, you know, like, get me out of here, like, and just trapped under there, and to hear this account from them. And this particular guy who had this flag, so this cover picture is them coming across this flag as they're, you know, after they had recovered the guys and they had 100% on personnel, they're going through and they're digging out, you know, weaponry, and they're digging out everything else that was under there. And they come across this flag, and somebody had the foresight to snap this picture as they're pulling the flag out of the ground. But Erickson calls me up, and he's talking about this, that he has this particular flag, and to be handed this flag with tears streaming down his face because of what it meant to him.
Yeah.
And finding a place for it, you know, we tried to get it into the unit's historical case, and we couldn't get a hold of anybody there. But it was sort of it was just how it was meant to be, because we kind of remembered that there was a ceremony after we got back that was honoring the guys that, you know, were killed during that deployment during within the battalion. And there's a paver out front of the Airborne and Special Operations Museum in Fayetteville, North Carolina, that has their names on it. So I called the museum kind of in hopes of, hey, you know what, maybe it just feels right. Talk about feeling right. The curator picked up. That doesn't happen. Normally there's somebody at the front desk.
Yeah, yeah.
And I go into this 30-second elevator pitch with this guy, and after 30 seconds, the line is dead silent. I'm like, hey, you still there? The answer that came back to me was, I've been waiting for this phone call. Talk about powerful. And going through this with him and understanding the significance of what that flag meant to a lot of these guys, and seeing it, you know, on that cover picture, but then going into having the actual book launch event at the museum, and people can come in, and you can still go down there. But that flag is now part of the DoD Historical Archives. That's preserved for perpetuity. Guys can bring their great grandkids there, you know, and say, you know, the family can be like, that's what he did. That's where he served. This is what he's been through, and what made, that whoever particular person the man that he is today. And this is what he's done with it. It's been, man, to be able to put something like that forward and to do something like that for the guys, it's been really rewarding.
Man, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. I think about the power of that flag, and I've even said this on my podcast when I was doing something more political, is like the people that have died for that flag, the people that have served our country, the people that have gone through what you have and what all the people in this book have gone through, to see people desecrate our flag in our own country, to see people that will replace our flag with a Palestinian flag or any other flag and not understand the gravity of what you just said, is one, like, disrespectful doesn't even do it. It's disgusting. And so I hope that anyone that hears this and your story will share it so that our flag is never disrespected, especially in our own country, ever again.
Means a lot to a lot of those guys, that's for sure.
Man, thanks, brother.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Will. Spartans, you know what to do. Share this episode. Remember, the good and great are the enemies of possible. Lead like a Spartan today.